Hey folks, it's me TheTacticalBrit and I'm back again with some more Realism Modern Warfare RTX enabled gameplay. This video today is brought to you by Aorus and NVIDIA. A huge shout out to these guys for sponsoring this video, and we're using two insane products today. To start with, we've got the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2070 Super. This is one of their new flagship supermodel cards. It has incredible performance and comes in at a really good price point for 1440p gaming. It enables all of the ray tracing effects you're seeing in the game today, alongside numerous other titles that support ray tracing, and it can provide you really good frame rates for those super high refresh rate monitors. And high frame rates are important in FPS titles, which leads me on to my next item today, the Aorus FI27Q. This is a crazy monitor. It runs at 165Hz refresh rate, it is G-Sync certified, it has a super low response time of 1 millisecond, HDR supported, and if you ever needed RGB for a monitor, well now you have it, because it's arguably, in my opinion, one of the best looking monitors I've ever owned, and it comes with this super sturdy metal stand, which I really do appreciate. Combining the graphics card and the monitor has given me outstanding looking gameplay, but it also gives me super high frame rates to utilize that 165Hz G-Sync display. And honestly guys, I think this is one of the best products I've used this year, and arguably the best upgrade I've made to my setup this year. So please check them out in the link in the description below. These guys have been great sponsors of my channel over the past year or so. Okay, so in today's video we're going to be tackling how you should be approaching realism mode, because I have a lot of people who say that they want to play this mode, they jump in, they die really quickly, and that's the end of that. And today I'm going to give you guys some pro tips and advice for what you should be looking out for in realism mode. And let's start with the fundamentals, and that is your weapon class. This is something I get asked regularly about what we should be taking into that game mode, and it's a combination of two things. I think you're looking for high rate of fire and high accuracy, because there is a sort of sense in this mode that the person who fires first is the one that tends to win, and that can be the case in a good number of scenarios, enough that you should perhaps warrant a high rate of fire weapon. But most importantly is accuracy, which is why you've seen in a lot of this gameplay me using things like the Kilo 141, or if I've got a really good trigger finger, I'll use something like the FAL. Even though it's a semi-automatic weapon, it does pack a punch. And recently I've actually been using a little bit of the Scar H as well. I found that this has been an effective alternative. It's a nice middle ground of high power output for instant kills, as well as something that's a little bit more slow firing and easier to control. Ironically, as much as realism mode does make everybody more lethal, the headshots still reign supreme in this. So if you land a 1-tap or 2-tap headshot, you've basically got the job done before there even needs to be some kind of engagement. Realistically speaking, I find that using an assault rifle is the most effective weapon, just because SMGs do sometimes limit your engagement ranges, and using sometimes marksman variants isn't really what you're looking for in this mode, because a lot of the engagements do happen CQB. So in my opinion, I think you're best suited with an assault rifle. They are just the all-rounder class. Up next we have movement. This is something that frequently comes up as well in this game mode. I think a lot of people play realism mode and they kind of get a little bit scared. Now don't get me wrong, realism mode is certainly more excuse than any to be checking your corners and pacing yourself when you enter buildings and other places, and especially using things like flashbangs and other secondary grenades. However, the big mistake I think a lot of people made is that they stick to this pace. Realism mode is really about successfully going between mad speed and really slow. It's one of those things that I don't think is very easy to master, but for the most part, when you're entering buildings and going into dangerous situations and areas where you're pretty sure there's going to be enemies, you do tend to slow it right down, because of course in most scenarios the first shot wins, and if you're more readily able to see the first person rather than they are if they're sprinting around or just going all over the place, then that makes sense. But at the same time, there are some scenarios that just call for that kind of gameplay, the kind of gameplay where you just sort of have to run at everything and give it your all in every scenario, whether it be a jump shot around the corner or a slide shot. Those things do become necessitated in Modern Warfare, and when you're playing realism mode, I highly recommend that you should jump between the two paces, try and switch up your pace a little bit, and even change classes to accommodate different kinds of playstyles, just because the more fresh and more varied your gameplay, the less likely you are to run into any kind of trouble. And well, my final tip is kind of a simple one, but I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to agree with it anyway. Call of Duty is Call of Duty, and whether or not you're playing Realism mode or Standard mode or anything in between, there is always going to be one simple rule that will always work in most scenarios. Now, I don't advocate it, and personally I don't necessarily believe there is any one right way to play this game. But scumbag tactics do reign supreme, and by scumbag tactics I mean corner camping, I mean proning in certain objective areas. There are just some things that are just downright effective. There's no point edging around it and pretending like, ah, no, I don't do that. How could I? That's such a horrible thing. That's just not true. Realistically, I think if you're just any normal player in Call of Duty, you know it's a successful tactic, you know it's something that works, and there is no reason why you shouldn't use it. Yes, you may get a couple of mean messages every time, but realistically, if you've won the game, that doesn't really matter. And I find personally that, you know, the big thing I notice is that people tend to corner camp, and that's when they go wrong, because they just sort of sit in that location and expect everything will work. Positional rotation is important. You know, if you're camping in one corner, cool, drop a few people, boom, rotate to the next corner. So when they come in, they're expecting you to be on the left, but you're on the right, and that split second will give you enough time to get the drop on them. And stuff like that is just really important, I find, in managing to do everything in the game that you want to do successfully. So really give that a go, you know, just utilize those tactics and try and rotate what you've done. Keeping spontaneity and refreshing your gameplay style is really important in games, whether it's rotating positions, trying some different classes, that kind of stuff can lead to a huge success rate. But anywho folks, it's been me, TheTacticalBrit. Thank you again for NVIDIA and Aura sponsoring this video. Really appreciate their products, the 2070 Super and the FI 27Q. Feel free to check those out in the description below. They've been great sponsors for my channel recently, and I'm very fortunate to have them around. But thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in another upload.